Hello and welcome back to Lorcana Villain. My name is Baker. And today we got the top 8 deck lists for a 94 player event that took place in the United States at Southside Gaming. The first set of set 6 meta decks of the season actually came courtesy of Southside Gaming. So we've covered them in the past, and this was an 8 case event. I'm not sure what the cases were. Maybe they were all Azurite C. It might have been a selection of different things, but nonetheless, that is some pretty good prize support. This event took place on the 28th of December. Let me take the time to say, for those of you that celebrate it, I hope you had a wonderful Christmas, and if you don't celebrate it, then I hope you did something fun in the holiday season nonetheless. It was a nice, quiet one for me and Mama Villain. We watched a lot of Disney films, and then we rounded off with The Mummy and The Mummy Return. The original Mummy, but of course, not the remake. I'm not a psychopath. For some reason, we kind of see that as a Christmas film in this house. I don't know why, but thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a while. But yeah, I hope you've had a good Christmas, good holiday season. And yeah, this will be our final set of deck lists for the year, unless another event is suddenly revealed tomorrow, a set of deck lists or something like that. But I imagine this will be the final set of deck lists for this year, and what a wonderful year it's been. Of course, we're drawing closer and closer to North American Continentals, which is very, very exciting. I can't wait to watch that, and I will be doing my Ultra Data project for the week leading up to that event, and taking as many big events with more than 30 players as I can into consideration. And yeah, apologies that I never got to do that before the European Championships. I got super, super busy, but I will do it for the North American ones. But yeah, that's basically it. We're going to look at some deck lists. A quick shout out to the channel sponsor, Cardmarket. If you're looking for Lorcana singles at competitive rates, then check out Cardmarket. But let's look at some top 8 deck lists. So in first place, we have Casey with some good old-fashioned Ruby Amethyst control. The only RA deck in this top 8, and it is quite a varied top 8 in general. There's a few ink combinations to take a look at, which is super good. But yeah, 94 players is a very respectable field. And despite only one Ruby Amethyst deck making it to top 8, it did go all the way. So Ruby Amethyst still on a bit of a roll at the moment. And there are a couple of less common choices in this deck. The main one really being the 1-drop Moana, self-taught sailor, 1-cost inkable, 3/2 quest for 1, and learning the ropes. This character can't challenge unless you have a captain character in play. We're playing no captains whatsoever, so she is never challenging, but she can just sit there and quest, and eventually they don't want you just questing for 1 every turn for free. Eventually they're going to be incentivized to try and take it out, so it becomes the target of something like a storm or a cannons, and if that's being used on Moana, then maybe it's not being used on your Flynn or your Chernobog's followers or whatever. So that's pretty cool, but really the purpose behind this Moana is an early trigger of the Flynn Rider. Generally speaking, you wouldn't expect your Flynn Rider to proc until coming back into your turn 4, when you've had the chance to establish either the Sisu or the Fox by bouncing back your 1-drop. Against the Sapphire decks, like the slower decks, then there's a chance that just your Flynn Rider with the 2 strength or a Chernobog, if you play that on 1, can be enough to get you an early proc, but traditionally you have to wait until you come back into your turn 4. Of course, they can brawl it, but that's not always the best for them if they're Ruby Sapphire and on their turn 3, when they've typically got 4 ink after a turn 2 ramp. Brawling sometimes is just a necessary evil because they can't allow you to get that lore game, but it's not always preferable for them. So sometimes it's just like about making your opponent take unpreferable lines. But yeah, the point being, generally the earliest we would expect a Flynn proc a lot of the time is coming back into your turn 4. But with this turn 1 Moana, then being able to get it coming into your turn 3, those odds are a lot higher. So that's pretty cool. Running 3 Chernobog and 3 Broom. Our bounce package is 4 Snake, 4 Fox, 4 Goat, 2 copies of Crab, which I'm really liking. Again, I'm actually at a higher count than this on Crab. I'm really valuing it at the moment. Only 2 Rabbit, running 4 Genie. I've actually reached a point in my Ruby Amethyst playtesting where I'm on the 4 Rabbit and 3 Genie, because as good as Genie is, and you do want to see it a lot of the time, I'm finding that there's a lot of times where I'm wishing it was the Rabbit, just because it's more important for me to start accumulating card advantage. So that's just my own observation, but this is still a perfectly fine count. We're running 2 copies of Bell. That really helps in the specifically against opposing Genies, but has other niche use cases as well. Elsa, also good in against the Genies and against the Amethyst and Emerald decks in general. 2 Maui is what I'm on at the moment, and I'm feeling it is enough. I think there's reasonably this could still go back up to 3. I think it reasonably go up to 4 as well, to be honest. But I think 2 is fine, especially when you're playing Crab, so you'll have to see it. 2 of Ladies I think is right. There are times where I want more Tremaines, just because against Ruby Sapphire, their threat density is insane now. With the Tamatoas, the Maleficents, the Maui Sharks, sometimes they're playing Hades as well now, and other just big bodies. So there are times where I want more Tremaines, and I've even fluttered around with Beaking Undisputed and Dragonfire, but I think this is probably correct, and it's going to make your deck more consistent more at the time. One copy of Elsa is super spicy. Of course, this can shift on to the 5th Spirit that we're running 4 copies of. Shout out to Conti Dragon from European Championships, who made top 4, I believe, with Ruby Amethyst. Yeah, it wasn't top 2. I'm pretty sure it was top 4 or top 8. But they were running Ruby Amethyst with only 3 copies of 5th Spirit and 1 copy of this Spirit of Winter. And I said at the time, I do like the inclusion of Spirit of Winter. If I was going to do that, I would want to max out on the Elsas, which Casey has done here, so I like that. And yeah, I like this Elsa as just a way to slow them down, and even sometimes just the shift Elsa quest for 3, sometimes they won't see coming and can be enough to either get you game or get you close enough that now you're just a go bounce away. So yeah, I like the inclusion. One big Sisu is really strong at the moment against the Emerald decks and the Amber decks in particular. Not great against Ruby Sapphire. It can be okay, like it gets rid of Flavishams and stuff like that, but really this is for the more aggressive decks. 3 copies of Brawl is tempting. I understand the temptation. I don't think I'm brave enough, personally, to go down to the 3 Brawl, though I do understand the temptation. But worked out for Casey. 4 copies of Friends, and then only 3 Be Prepared, which is another one where I get the temptation. I've fluttered around with only 3 copies throughout, like, latter set 5 and early set 6. Ultimately, I'm back on 4, and I was speaking to Ed Lorcana about this not so long ago, where it's just the case of sometimes you just play Be Prepared and you just win the game, right? Just because if you're able to get like a good enough value from that 1B prep, then you can just win the game on the spot. And there's also situations where it's I need to play B prep this turn or I lose. Not necessarily because they're questing for game the next turn, but the more you play Lorcana, the more you realise that games are decided often by a specific turn, which is normally a lot sooner than the game actually ending. Of course, cards of top decks can, of course, change things infinitely. But yeah, sometimes just the right Be Prepared on the right turn either wins you the game or at least stops you for sure losing the game and allows you to fight back. So I'm back on 4 B prep, but again, I think 3 does and can and does work. So yeah, really nice looking list with a couple of spicy options, the Moana being the most unique, I think. I am interested to see if more people will go down this road and try including the Moanas themselves, but nonetheless, a huge congratulations to Casey. As I said, that was our only Ruby Amethyst list, so going into second place, we have Joey with Ruby Sapphire, which is the deck that a lot of top players are saying feels like the best deck at the moment, which is nothing new to hear. That's been a common opinion for a while now, that Ruby Sapphire is just the strongest. And the threat density, as I mentioned not long ago, is just so much now with the 3 new Maui Shark, 6 cost inkable, 7/5 quest for 1, evasive. When he challenges a character, you can return an action from your discard to your hand, and whenever you play an action, gain 1 lore. Just the way that this can freeze a board by putting it down, like similar to things like Tinkerbell, where suddenly they need to assess if it's worth them continuing to quest out. Because if it's giving back the Ruby Sapphire player like Sales, Visions of the Future, How Far I'll Go is never feels good to give them back a How Far I'll Go. We've got 2 B preps, we've got 2 Pirates Life in here, the 1 Hideaway. So yeah, it just never feels good to give them that free action back. I do find sometimes as the Ruby Amethyst player, sometimes you have to just play into it. Because if you just sit there and stall out, you know, you get to that latter part of the game where they become favoured. Because they've got so much ink and their high end is, their cards are just so much better than yours, generally speaking. Unless you're close enough to game that you just need to wait it out for like a go bounce. But if you're not that close, then you can't really afford to stall for too long. I'm not saying that is definitely the right way to play Ruby Amethyst into Ruby Sapphire, but my point being, the way this Maui can just like freeze boards is just incredible, and the passive lore gain. This Maui Shark is just super good, running 4 T-Po for Ramp and 4 Sail the Azurite Sea. We've got 3 of the Daring Visitor Sisu and 3 of the Empowered Sibling to be that shift target, 4 Tala, 4 Flavisham, 2 Maui, only 2 Tamatoa seems super low, personally. But made it to second place, so data for Maleficent Dragon, which I think is necessary. Like if you're expecting a lot of mirror matches, then you need the dragons. And then a pretty typical action lineup. I've already mentioned them all. And then we've got 3 Vitalisphere, which is great, obviously, for giving your Maui half shark rush out of nowhere. But a lot of the characters can potentially get value from this, and especially because there's a lot more Mukduk mana in format now. So it's more, if you've got the ink, then you could potentially Maldragon and then banish a Vitalosphere and immediately take that out. So yeah, I like the inclusion. 3 Ice Block that obviously complement the Brawls and the Sisu. No Medusa in here is certainly worth highlighting, and 4 copies of Porpsicle. So yeah, really nice looking list. Yeah, I still think Medusa is super good, and the Tamatoa count seems low to me, personally. Oh, and also worth highlighting, no Lucky Dime in this list, which more and more Ruby Sapphire lists are cutting. I think it's a 50-50. I don't think it's a sure thing. I think the Dime helps a lot more into the Ruby Amethyst matchup, for sure. But yeah, other than that, a super good looking list. Congratulations to Joey. Going to top 4, also on Ruby Sapphire, we have Jonathan, who's playing a few extra, more techie options. For a start, running 2 copies of Queen of Hearts to help you out against the more aggro, in the more aggro matchups, against Emerald, to get rid of those cursed Merfolk, and even just against the Amethyst decks that aren't expecting the Queen of Hearts from the Ruby Sapphire player. Like, you might reveal that you're Ruby Sapphire in turn 1, ink a Ruby card and play a Porpsicle, something like that. And then generally speaking, a lot of Amethyst players will feel safe just questing and sitting with like Magic Brooms and Chernobogs. So you can potentially punish them for that with this Queen of Hearts. Of course, if it's Chernobog, then you trade. But if you can hit a Broom, then that feels super nice. So yeah, Queen of Hearts can definitely punish people who don't expect it. Don't expect to see it, and of course, as I said, just good in the aggro matchup. We've got 4 Tipo, 4 Sail the Azurite Sea, running a 3/3 Sisu line. We are seeing those 2 copies of Medusa, 3 Tala, 4 Flavisham, 3 Maui, only 2 copies of the Maui Shark, and 3 copies of the Tamatoa So Shiny. I suppose if you want to play so many cards, you got to find the room somewhere. Only 3 copies of Mali Dragon, the 1 Hideaway, which we're seeing more often than not these days, as opposed to things like Kuzco. Only 2 copies of How Far I'll Go. I do think it's low. I think it's one of the best cards in the deck, personally. I like the 1 Let It Go as an extra removal option. And yeah, then for the items, we are seeing that 1 Lucky Dime. So this deck, I think, would have an easier time into Ruby Amethyst than the prior, in my opinion. And we are playing that 1 Great Stone Dragon. No Fishbone Quill in this or the previous lists, but that's becoming very common these days, where it's not really a, oh my god, there's no Quill in here. We've seen a lot of the successful Ruby Sapphire decks deciding to cut that Quill and just go with the Great Stone Dragon instead. And yeah, it seems to be working super well for them. The 4 Brawl, 3 Vision of the Future, yeah, all looks super good. I particularly like the Queen of Hearts inclusion. I think that you can get some you can really punish players for that. And if it's open deck list, just them seeing that you have it in the list may force them to, you know, not leave something sitting there that would give you a valuable, give your opponent a valuable trade. But nonetheless, a super good looking list. Congratulations to Jonathan. Also in top 4, we have our one and only Blurple deck. Some Sapphire Amethyst, courtesy of Jack. Shout out to Fumbles, a friend in the community that I've done some playtesting with, who I know is absolutely eating up with a Blurple list at the moment. I don't know how similar it is to this one. I know a few of the cards are definitely the same. But yeah, shout out to Fumbles, who I know is really enjoying Blurple at the moment. And hey, like, Blurple a lot of the time should have a pretty good Ruby Amethyst matchup, I would say. And it's just an awful lot of fun. And yeah, made top 4 in this 94-player event, so you love to see it. Running 10 1-drops, 4 Chernobogs followers, 2 Brooms, and 4 Diablos, which makes all the sense with these 3 Merlin Crab here that work really well with the Diablo. Our bounce package is 4 Snake, 4 Fox, 4 Goat, and 3 copies of Rabbit and 4 Genie, which again, I'm leaning more towards the 4 Rabbit, 3 Genie. But I think in Blurple, this is probably correct. Nonetheless, perfectly acceptable counts. 2 copies of Belle, 4 copies of Elsa to help you in those Genie Wars, and that's the example I make most of the time, but there are other great uses, of course, to both of these cards. Elsa, like, taking out the aggro cards, and Belle, if you've got some sitting damage, then this can come out of nowhere and really give you a nice value turn. 3 copies of Donald Duck, who of course provides extra ramp, but is also a quest for 2 body, which is super important. 3 copies of Hades for the removal. 3 Spirit of Winter Elsa, makes all the sense. And then we've got 4 Sail the Azure at Sea, 4 Friends, and 1 copy of Let It Go, Let It Go. Looking really good, and Blurple has always been a lot of fun. I'm itching to try a Blurple list myself, actually, once I've finished my extensive Ruby Amethyst playtesting, because we got set championships coming up, and your boy needs that scar. But nonetheless, love to see this deck doing well. Huge congratulations to Jack. Going to top 8, we've got the first of 2 Amethyst Steel lists, but both very different. I like this deck. Shout out to Specio, I know I like some Amethyst Steel. I think it's brave, like, into a perceived large Ruby Sapphire field, personally, but you do also have some good matchups. But yeah, running 4 copies of Chernobog, 2 Broom, and 4 Diablo with those 3 Crab. Just mentioned that in the previous list. Great synergy there. 2 Snake, 4 Fox, 4 Goat, 2 Rabbit, and 4 Genie. With a list like this, you do want to be more aggressive, so I think the higher Genie count does make sense here. 3 copies of that White Rose for the lore game. 3 copies of Calhoun, one of the best 2-drops in the game. Sitting right next to probably the best 2-drop in the game, which is Mr. Smee. It's probably Ursula. It's probably Ursula too, but still, Mr. Smee definitely be up there, and I think Calhoun is up there as well. 2 copies of Pete to shut down those actions. We've got 2 Bell and 4 Elsa. We've explained the uses for these a couple of times. 2 copies of Tinkerbell to be a more mid-game, mid-range threat. 2 Fire the Cannons, 3 Friends, 3 Strength, and 1 Zeus. So playing like a lot of 2s and 3s here, trying to include a lot of different things. And yeah, Amethyst Steel, a lot of fun. I think your SteelSong matchup should be pretty good. I think your Ruby Amethyst matchup is probably fine. I feel slightly favoured as Ruby Amethyst, but they can take games off you for sure. But yeah, the Ruby Sapphire matchup I would have thought is super, super scary. But nonetheless, led them all the way to top 8. Huge congratulations to Dylan. And our other Amethyst Steel deck, piloted by Roger to top 8. I'm very pleased to see we've got a Jafar list, a super clean 2-line special. So we're utilising the Jafar, who when he is exerted, whenever you draw a card, you gain 1 lore. And of course, we're running 4 copies of A Whole New World. So the high roll here is that we sing A Whole New World with Jafar and immediately gain 7. And then the even higher roll is we have more ink/characters on board who allow us to sing things like Friends on the Other Side, Let the Storm Rage On. We've got the library here that lets us draw cards, and if we can like have that pop off during our own turn, move to library and make a trade with something so that we're drawing more cards, then that's great. Running 4 copies of the Blue Fairy here, which is another way to draw cards, and a large Floodborn package to complement that. Along with the Jafar, we're running a 4/4 Robin Hood line, who can also just be another singer, because you can, if you've got Robin Hood and Jafar down and they're both dry, sing Whole New World with Jafar, draw 7, gain 7. Oh, I found another Whole New World. Let's sing that with a Robin Hood. Draw 7, gain 7. And by that point in the game, like maybe you've already found that other 7 lore from 6 lore from elsewhere, and you've just won the game. So that's pretty cool. We're running a 4/4 Jim Hawkins line. Of course, the 2-drop when you ink, he gains Challenger 2. There's no ramp in here, so we're only ever inking once per turn, but it's still fine. He's got a big body of that 4 willpower, so hopefully he survives to shift into the big Jim, who on play lets you deal damage to a chosen character. And he's a 5/5, and if you did ink before you played, before you shifted this Jim, then he still has that Challenger 2, so we can technically hit him for 7. And again, he's another character that can sing A Whole New World. And we're running a 4/4 Aladdin line in here as well. We've got 4 copies of the 1-drop 1/3, which is the nice stat line for survivability. And of course, the Floodborn, you shift by discarding a location card, of which we're running 4 library and 1 Bayou. Is it Bayou or Bayou? Devil's Bayou. I think it's Bayou. I used to get that wrong all the time, and my audience would really give me a hard time over it, and fairly so. I should be saying the names right. But it's been so long since I've seen it, I've forgotten what the right one was. I'm trying to remember Madame Medusa saying it in The Rescuers. Devil's Bayou. I think it's Bayou. Nonetheless, we've got that 4/4 Aladdin line here. So yeah, if we have shifting, we have to discard a location, but we can just play this Aladdin on its own, and if we've got Blue Fairy on board, then of course we're drawing a card. I like the Floodborn being here. I don't know if there are better 1-drops we could potentially be including in this list. Food for thought, but I like the inclusion, or at least of the Floodborn, to trigger Blue Fairy. We've got 3P here to shut down those B preps and just any action of your choice. And we're running 4 copies of Dreadnought Jafar, who in and of himself is a Floodborn, which can trigger the Blue Fairy. It's something that we can shift the Striking Illusionist on top of, so that's cool. But we are, of course, running 4 copies of the Royal Vizier. 2-cost Inkable 3/2 and has evasive during your turn, so also a nice way to get rid of Diablos or finish off a Genie if you've already procced it with a Storm Rage on or with the Gym Shift or something like that. So yeah, absolutely love it. And of course the Bayou, 1 cost, inkable location, 1 to move there, 3 willpower, 1 passive lore, and if you've got a character there and they quest, you can draw a card and discard a card, which will also give you a lore if you've got Jafar exerted on board. So yeah, cool. Again, I don't know if we could do something better with these 4 1-drop Aladdins and this 1 Bayou. Like, I'd be tempted to run the Archimedes line, poisonally, but other than that, super like this list. Love me some Jafar, so huge congratulations to Roger. And our final deck list in top 8, we've got Freddy with some SteelSong, 64 cards. I mean, we are playing a whole new world, so hopefully we're still getting through a lot of our deck and seeing a lot of our deck. No one tell Podcana. It's a secret. But hey, there you go, 64 cards, 94-person tournament, made it to top 8. Must be doing something right, even if you think the card count is incorrect. Clearly did something right. But yeah, SteelSong, 4 copies of Cinderella Ballroom Sensation, who of course can sing these 3 or less cost songs, which are 4 Strength and 4 Storm Rage On. Not playing Bear or anything cute, World's Greatest Criminal Mind or anything. Just these standard songs. No Stout-Hearted Cinderella as a shift target, but we are more aggressive. This looks similar to the Zach Bivens build, to be honest. We've got 4 Daisy, except we're running a 3-4 Robin Hood line, which Bivens is not on. 2 copies of Lilo, which I don't think Bivens is on that either. He's on the Piglets, even though he doesn't like the Piglet. So yeah, like there's a lot different to the Bivens list, but a couple of similarities. Running 4 copies of Ursula, who can sing our 4 or less cost songs, which of course includes Along Came Zeus, and is a nice card on the draw, so I like the inclusion of Ursula. 4 Smee, of course, for the stats. 4 Ariel to hopefully find songs and sing them on the cheap. 3 copies of that baritone bully Gaston, who is very much a shout out to the Zach Bivens list. I really enjoy this Gaston. I think with the Brawls and Sisus, this Gaston just has better survivability to be able to sing your 5 cost songs. Of course, they can still ice block to get around this Gaston, but yeah, I like the inclusion. 3 Lawrence for great stats, 4 Pete, 4 Rapunzel for the card draw if we can get that turn off, 3 copies of Pluto, a nice great big bodyguard, 5/5 on a 4 cost is incredible, 2 copies of the big bad scary Gantu. Have an answer for this or I'm gaining 4 lore. Very scary. Mention the Robin Hood line, and we've mentioned all the songs. So yeah, a slightly more mid-range version with less emphasis on songs in general, but looks super good. 64 cards, man, but led them to top 8, so huge congratulations to Freddy. And it turns out I'm a fool of a took for completely missing. This is the final deck list, courtesy of Mark in top 8, also with some SteelSong, a slightly different version to Freddy's that we looked at a moment ago. Notably, we see 2 copies of Baloo, the 3 cost uninkable 0/3 quest for 1 bodyguard, and when he's banished, gain 2 lore, so nearly always is going to represent that 2 lore. We're also running 3 copies of Sven, who's a 4 cost inkable 3/3 quest for 2, and on play you can ready a chosen character, so you could have a character quest and then re-ready them with Sven and then have them sing something, or just keep them ready to keep them safe, and he quests for 2, so that's pretty nice. And we're seeing this is a dock build, 4 copies of that dock, so we want to play out as much of our hand as possible and then refresh. In that interest, we've got a very wide low end with those 4 Cinderella that can sing the 4 Storm or Strength, 4 Daisy, 3 copies of Mickey Mouse, who's a 1 cost 1/2 quest for 1 and resist, so he can be quite tricky to remove, 4 copies of Piglet, Pooh Pirate Captain, we got Lilo's up in here, and we're running 3 copies of Kida, Protector of Atlantis on play, lower the strength of all characters on board by 3, and she quests for 2, so hopefully ensuring a nice free questing turn at the midpoint of the game. So yeah, another really nice looking SteelSong list. Congratulations to Mark. And that is it for the top 8 deck list from Southside Gaming, 8-case event with 94 players. Great to have a nice big pool of data to sort of wrap up the year. Again, if there's another large event that the lists are revealed before New Year, then I might get to it, but I'm expecting this to be my last video of the year. I want to take the time to say one more time just such a huge thank you to everyone that's been here supporting me and supporting my content. I've had literally a dream year, and yeah, it's still so wild to me, the experiences that I've got to have this year, and yeah, I'm just so grateful for everyone that's supported me and made that happen, because it really has been life-changing, and it's just concerning my mental health, it's just put me in a much, much better frame of mind than I was this time last year, shall we say. So yeah, I just want to say one more time, just such a huge shout out and a thank you to everyone that's enabled me to have the privileges and the opportunities that I've had. I'm really so grateful. I do want to just give a quick bit of admin as well and respond to the feedback from my last video, the Zach Bivens interview, which wasn't awful by any means, and to be fair, the one criticism that was made was done in a super polite and super like constructive criticism way, and not in a you know, trying to attack or anything. And there were some comments that made by other people that actually disagreed and were like, oh, I disagree with that. I thought it was a great interview. Well done. But I still always want to take, which I thank you for, but I still always want to take on criticism and see where I can learn and be better. And yeah, the criticism was that I was talking too much in the interview with Zach. And yeah, I have always tried to be super aware of when I've got guests on, whether it's one guest or multiple guests, of shutting up and like giving them time to speak, because again, they're a guest on my channel. People can hear me anytime, so I always try and really value that. And I always felt like I got that balance done down super well in the past, and I've had comments to kind of back that up and say, oh, like, well done for, like, you know, letting them have the chance to cook, basically. So it's always been something that I've been super aware of. So when I read the comment, I was a bit like, oh, that's interesting. So I actually went back and watched the video again. Of course, I'd already watched it a couple of times in the edit. But yeah, went back and watched it again. And I do think there's something to be said for that criticism that was made. I don't think it was throughout the entire video, but I think there's definitely a couple of sections where I waffle on a bit too much. And probably the worst crime is, as opposed to getting Zach's opinions or thought trails on certain things, I'm trying to validate and justify my own opinions, which is absolutely wrong. Is like, that's fine for me to do in my own videos when it's just me, and people can choose to watch and listen or not. But when I've got guests, that shouldn't be my priority. The priority should absolutely be, you know, getting their thoughts. So I've taken that on board, watched it back, and I do think there's something to be said for the criticism. So fair game, boss, and I will absolutely look out for that in the future. And please do continue to give me constructive criticism, but please still keep it as friendly as you can. But that's going to be it from me for now. If you don't see me again before New Year, then I wish you a very happy New Year. And again, just a huge thank you to everyone that's shown an incredible amount of support. But that's going to be it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you're brand new to the channel, please subscribe for all things Lorcana. Hit that like button to show support, and we'll see you soon.